Hey, thanks everybody for coming over to talk about this very, very interesting topic. I think there's a lot of interest in gaming now to do good with games. And you guys have all had your experiences, thoughts, everything. We're going to share a lot today. But I wanted to start off with hearing your relationship with doing good with games. So let's start with Anders there with the new microphone.
Yeah, and it works. I can hear it myself. My personal experience has mostly been from the game side and not as a company. I think there's like two approaches. I've done a lot of learning games, which for me has some kind of games for good incentive. As a company, as Funday Factory, we have chosen to do some games over the years that were like maybe not financially the best choices, but actually had some kind of altruistic value. Like we did a game for new parents, so there's a communication game, so they learn to talk to each other and communicate about being parents to help lowering divorce rates in Denmark, which was a really interesting project. And then our good partners, Cyber Games, are part of this Playing for the Planet initiative. I know you guys are involved as well. I guess we'll hear more in the next section as well, where Sam from the UN will talk about it. So we're trying to get into Playing for the Planet as well. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, Cassia.
So I have a largely business background. So I've always been in business development, highly commercial companies like NetEase. But I'm really starting a journey with doing good with games. We're starting Wings Interactive, which is a fund that invests in games developed by female game developers and diverse teams. So 97% of game investors are male. There's 80% of game developers are also male. There's a strong skew in the games industry that has manifested as well in the content and also impacts the players. And I don't think that incidents such as Gamergate is really a coincidence. I think that is those kind of incidents are born out of the overall industry and content that has arisen from these circumstances. So really looking to create a more socially fair and just industry and content and player community around PC and console.
Cool. Hello. So I guess for me personally, I guess I've always seen games or our industry as a way that we could somehow do more than we're doing, or we have such an ability to reach so many people, and I think if we were to use that reach for something good, even in small ways, we could make a massive difference. And so I think at my company now, I've sort of always been the person who would implement any type of CSR initiative, if you can call it that. We don't actually have that role, but so whether it's student mentoring or I'm part of the green initiative in our company as well. Like Anders mentioned, we joined the Playing for the Planet Alliance. And if you're around, you should listen to Sam's talk after this, because he'll talk more about that. And then maybe like a year ago or so, I thought, oh, you know what? I'm sure tons of other people think the same and would like to use games for more, the same way that we use books or music or film. You know, they tell us about, just like what it's like to be human, and we can reach people with that. And so tomorrow, actually, we're going to have an event around Games for Good on a larger scale. And you can see like this room is pretty full. Our event's also sold out. There's a wait list. Like I think there's so much interest in this space in particular, which is amazing. Yeah.
I'm glad I got my ticket early, so get in. Nikolina.
So hi, my name is Nikolina Zidar. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Unicorn Pirate Studio. I don't know, I guess I'm not that altruistic because we're actually a very commercial studio. But what makes us different is that we are focused on making games for women and LGBTQ plus audiences. Today, 50% of the gamers on a mobile at least is female, but as Cassia said, 80% of the developers are male, and honestly I find it ridiculous. So I started a studio which founding value is diversity. If you want to make games for diverse audiences, we should have representative of diverse audiences making those games. So we are 70% female, 10% non-binary, 20% male. About 60% of our employees represent themselves as LGBTQ+. We have young parents working there who can bring their children to work because we have a nanny on site. We welcome animals at work. Most of our team are vegans, so on our events we have diversity of food as well. We come from different backgrounds. We have people from Vietnam, Pakistan. I'm Croatian. My co-founder is Brazilian. We have Iranian, so like 25 people. We come from everywhere, and we are really deeply diverse in every aspect. We come from different backgrounds as well. I have a background in commercial gaming. I worked in Rohde and X Games. Lots of our people are still juniors, so we are basically trying to be as diverse as possible to really represent our audiences.
How do I follow that? That's a tough show, isn't it? So I work at MAG. We make quiz and word games and games that have a good heart, wholesome games, I think. And I think I'm at a different stage than some of these people, which is about 3 months ago I realised that we could be doing a lot more than we can. We have a really good opportunity here to do more things with our games, reach more people, tell more valuable messages. So I'm sort of representing the people that might be here that are just starting on that journey, and I'll tell you where I've got to so far.
Yeah. Hey, I think the opportunity is huge. So at least in the last 2 days, I've been talking to 4 different startups who have a mission to do good. There's a lot of things happening on the environmental side, so climate change related missions for companies to save the planet, things like that, which is like definitely needed. But what do you guys think about the kind of for-profit commercial opportunity to build something that's venture backable? What do you see the opportunity there to build something, a company that could grow huge?
I mean, I can speak for my behalf, about our company, about diversity and inclusion, because there's so many studies out there. I mean, if you just Google diversity in industry, you will find a dozen very reliable studies which all tell you the same thing. Having more diverse teams, it's more profitable. 30 to 40%, the numbers vary, but these are the numbers you're looking at. So if you are already successful, if you become more diverse, you're going to be 30% more profitable. And I don't see why you wouldn't invest in that, because it's just good business. So this is just a startup. This is not something that's niche or good to have because we are good people. I think it's a necessity for business to develop and grow.
And I see a general trend, actually, not just in games, but in business, and as a consumer trend, a desire for products which are good in some way. A recent study showed that brands which had a purpose, like a good social purpose, grew at like 2 times the rate of brands which had no purpose but their own product. Particularly in the fashion world, which I always look for business trends, sustainability is a massive issue, and some of the fastest growing fashion brands are sustainably driven. Then on the business and the corporate side, there's a growing number of alliances, like B Corps, of businesses that have a social profit behind them, social purpose, rather than that are also profitable, that also are driven by profit, but have a general desire to do good in society too.
Yeah, I think it's just like a general shift in consciousness that's starting to happen, and I actually think that if you try to fight that current, you're going to get left behind. Like you see so much more around like impact investing and stuff these days, or you've got Howard Buffett, who started a fund just for companies who are also going to try to make some kind of social impact. Jude, who's going to be speaking tomorrow, she's in Davos right now, and they're having a panel with UNDP and CNBC around, what are some of the ways that we can tackle climate change in innovative ways. Like, these things are coming to the world stage, and I think, if we don't keep up, we're just going to be left in the dust. And example, just last week, we had some of our players asking us, can you create a way for us to be able to donate towards the Australia Fire Relief cause? And like when your players are asking you that means they're already ahead of you, right? Like really we should be thinking of this stuff. And that's something we just trialed last week, and we created bundles just so our communities could be able to donate through our games, and then we can donate that money to the Australia relief effort. And we still have to figure out, like, what are the learnings around that? Is that going to cannibalize some of our revenue from the weekend that we might have used on the bundle, and all of these things? But I think we have to start trying this stuff, because otherwise our communities are going to go somewhere else. So.
Yeah, I've got friends that were at Slush that made that their business really has environmental issues at the heart, and they found it very easy to get VC conversations, at least, and I think that's going to work out. I think it can't be exclusively it's just environmental things in and of themselves. It has to be a product that people want, or in our case, a game that people want. But I think to align yourself with something that consumers want to align themselves with is a good way to get your business going.
Nikolina, can I ask you, how do you, when you recruit people for like a diversity, like what's the, like, don't you risk the like you choose people for diversity rather than their competences? What's your process there?
No, actually we don't, and that's one of the most common misconceptions, that there's no competent diverse people. Of course there are. You just have to streamline. You have to know how to look for these people. You have to be very careful how you phrase your job ads. If you're looking for a rock star or handyman, if you're looking for a handyman, how can you expect non-binary person or woman to apply for this job, because they already feel this is not for them? So it's a very careful process, and it's a learning process as well, that we actually redefine our job ads and our interviewing process to really make sure that we are open and welcome to the diverse applicants as well. And it's working. Now we are getting more and more actually diverse applicants than when we started the company. So obviously something is working. Those people do exist, but very often they also feel they're not really welcome, because gaming industry, when you walk in a average gaming studio, it's mostly young white male, and it can be very scary. And so people just think, I don't even want to go there, rather do something else. So.
Do you guys think that like game development needs to change? Like, what kind of company do you need to have? Because oftentimes it is so much about having a game idea, building a game. What needs to change there to actually facilitate good games?
I would say sustainability of the business as well. I mean, if you're just making one game and this is the whole core of business, if I would be an investor, I would never invest in that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because to me that makes no sense. But if you're trying to build something in the long term, because most probably if it's a team coming together, it's huge pressure for the team. You have to deliver on time and make the game. It's going to be a success, otherwise you'll run out of money. If you're looking something that's sustainable in the long term, you have to look also to build sustainable teams. So to work with people with whom you genuinely want to work. Because I've been a head of production, and the worst problem is to work with people who are competent, but they're horrible to work with, because you don't get much out of their competence. I wouldn't call them rock stars, I would call them problem.
Sure.
I think I'd answer by saying that I have a history in games that came from console and PC games, and I think that we didn't realise at the time, but we were really set back by the fact that we had just a bunch of men in their 20s and 30s making games for people in men in their 20s and 30s. And it took 25 years before we started to make a different set of games. And as soon as we did, then you found, wow, there's a way bigger audience than we thought there was. It's just we're in a habit of making the same game over and over. But I don't think we're all the way over there yet. I mean, as you say, if you look in any work environment, you can see it's typically the same set of people. So there's further to go. And I think when we do get a bit further, then we'll start to see different results, better results, I think.
So to me, it's also I think, from a company standpoint, I think it just needs to be the founders that have that problem at heart and want to do something about it. It's where it starts. If there's no willingness to do anything in the ownership of the company, there's basically nothing to be done. So often I also think it's difficult to do that with older companies, to make that change. It's easier to do that from the beginning and find partners that actually have that games for good thought in their mindset from the beginning. Turning around an old ship takes maybe 25 years, you know. So I think it's, you're asking what kind of company. I think in a company with owners that care about it.
And there's so many different aspects of way that you can do good with games. So there is like the diversity aspect. There's also things about like accessibility, making sure that your games are accessible to people with different accessibility issues. And there's even ways where just directly giving a portion of your profits to a charity, or through your games, as you say, like appealing directly to players and helping them to donate to charity. There's like a ton of different ways that can be done, but as you say, it's really about leadership and an intention.
Yeah, no, I think Cass is right. I think sometimes we think like we just have to make a game that's going to do the good, and the premise for the game has to be this lofty, idealistic thing, but not necessarily. Like, existing companies who are making games can find small tweaks in their existing games to make a difference, or you can just do it through your company culture, you know? Like, is it through diversity? Is it, for example, like our company is going carbon negative, and like everybody is on board with that, and we think that's going to make a difference because hopefully we can help other people get on board too, and other studios get on board too. So, you know, it can be through your product, it can be through your company, it can be through your community that you're trying to reach. There's not just one way. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The way, I mean, what occurred to me before Christmas was that I'm thinking about why Candy Crush is worth the same amount of money as Star Wars, and at first I didn't understand that maths, and somebody explained it to me that the reach and the fact that people watch Star Wars twice a year, but people play Candy Crush every day. You know, millions and millions of people play it every day. So in our industry, our reach is what seems to be the most valuable thing we have. Every day, for an hour a day, people are playing our games. And I think we could do more of them we are currently doing as an industry there. That seems to be, I mean, we can be carbon neutral and carbon negative with the 80 people that we have in our office, but it feels there's a bigger win to be doing if we're comfortable saying something in our games in some form or other. That seems to be where we have the most potential.
Yes, because games are a cultural product. I think that the system-driven nature of most games can somewhat mask the cultural aspects that like games can be situated in, but actually they will all have messages of some kind. Like the kind of characters that are the leads in your game will reinforce certain stereotypes. Could reinforce certain stereotypes, negative stereotypes if you're not careful. Could reinforce. If you lack certain types of people in your game, if you don't portray them, that's also a kind of a political message. And that can have a negative impact upon your players if they feel erased. So having careful thought about like good that your content could do and good messages that your content could have is definitely worth thought.
I agree, and as Deborah mentioned, I don't think it's actually a choice anymore. And like in 5 years, you can't make that choice not to have those characters, and like the players are just gonna punish.
I think you can actually. Unfortunately, I think you can.
You think you do?
I think there's been a couple of indie games recently which have done well because they've deliberately sort of gone for the controversial.
There'll always be those players.
Yeah.
The bigger the games, the bigger the companies, I think the more the need will be to actually make that change.
Good point. Have you guys seen really good examples where basically the audience could learn a lot? Even like if you want to reach out from outside of gaming, like what have you guys seen?
Well, I think My Child Lebensborn, which won a BAFTA award for Games Beyond Entertainment last year or a couple of years ago, that's by Selecta Studio, and it's I never knew about Lebensborn, which is like a children born of German soldiers and local Norwegian women from the Second World War who were treated terribly badly when they were growing up in Norway. And that's a simulation game where you have to like take care of poor Klaus, who then gets bullied at school, and you have to choose what dialogue to say to him, and you feel like terrible. And it's just like, wow, it really helps grow your empathy, and it really helps you understand what it's like for the situation of someone being born in that situation. And so I think that was actually quite popular in China. Now people understand through that game the specific, like further empathy and understanding, and I think it's very important message or important empathy to learn at this point, particularly with, for example, the children of ISIS soldiers who are completely innocent, but do we punish them for the sake of what their parents have done? If you play My Child Lays, you're really not going to go down that far.
Yeah, I got obsessed with that game recently, and I met with Elin as well, who made the game, and it's such like a wonderful way of trying to portray like the other, and what do we think of the other, and even if we think we're open-minded, are we really? And so that game really struck a chord for me as well.
If you define games as a medium whereby the consumer has to interact with each other, not like there's some other definitions of games where you must have a victory condition, but then in that case, Minecraft isn't a game. But I think the interactive element of games means that there are so much opportunities to develop empathy with, because especially because you're paying for a first person perspective so often, that game developers can think about ways that they can leverage that to open players' minds to new perspectives.
I have an example on the other end of the spectrum, which is a much more subtle one, but a different idea. So the people that make Subway Surfers are putting solar panels on their roofs and recycled bins in their streets, and it's just trying to normalise. Roofs sometimes have solar panels on, and why wouldn't you have recycle bins? And if you can just start to just normalise those things, that's a game with 2.5 billion downloads, just reaching so many people, and it's just start getting used to it. I love that idea. That I found inspiring.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Cyber Games, who did the game, they were like really also in the forefront of like CO2 allowances and green investments and stuff. There's a lot of these serious games that I remember from early on. Like there's one called September 12th where you play you basically bomb terrorists, and every time you bomb them, more terrorists arrive because people are mourning the casualties. And I remember there's a ton of these serious games and news games that made like an impact for me anyway. But I don't it's not profitable games, I guess. It's more like art statements or news statements. So there's always like a difference, as you mentioned. Like you do stuff like Subway Surfers did, and like have more subtle messages, normalize stuff, or you can do like the news game that really dives deep into a subtopic, or you can do a company-wide. Like we took the train to Gamescom just to prove a point at one point. Like it's there's so many ways you can do this. I think it's difficult to have this topic games for good as in 30 minutes. It's a 30-year talk. But
there are some games which have been commercially successful and have serious topics. I actually think that's a bit a minor trend. So, for example, Papers, Please. That's really dealing with immigration and like making those moral choices. This War of Mine as well, exploring what it's like to survive war in a really serious and in quite authentic manner. And I suspect that there'll be more games like that coming out in the future.
Sure.
And they may well find audiences.
But can I ask a question about that? Do you think it's better to focus game production energy onto building a game as you described that has probably, it would be a small audience, or do you think you, in terms of where to spend energy, you're better off spending something that can be a massive audience, but you maybe give a more subtle message? How do you decide where to spend your energy? I don't know who I'm asking. But
I'm like, who are you looking at?
that's what I'm asking myself.
I'm going to answer it, but although nobody asked me anything, Cassia, sorry. This is something because when we were looking for investment, this is something that we found really often, that they're like, oh, so your founding value is diversity, so you're not commercial. No, we want to make top 10 grossing game, because that's how you send a message. I think you send a message when you have $1 billion and nobody can ignore you anymore. And then I'm going to be speaking on every conference about this by myself all the time. So I mean, this is our goal. So I think that, when you have that commercial success, it's much harder to be ignored. And these issues are much harder to be ignored.
Yeah, it's not mutually exclusive, I don't think.
Yeah. Sorry, Cassia.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Nikolina said.
Yeah, unfortunately we're running out of time. We need to continue this at the next Pocket Gamer. Things will improve. So yeah, big round of applause. People will be outside. We're going to take Q&A outside of the...
Actually, we can take a couple of questions here.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's see.
Yes, there.
Over there. All right, let's...
Do you have any thoughts on games in the classroom, or is that a little bit irrelevant?
On what, sir?
Games in the classroom, like as teaching methods?
I don't have like a very digital game point of view, but I used to teach English, and I would always use games. Like that was the best way to teach the kids to gain their attention. And like you think about games as a system where you can sort of train people again and again. And it's super engaging. I found it was like the best way to deliver language teaching. So,
yeah, there's lots of like even my child Lebensborn is being brought into the classroom now. Or if you're UK-based, Digital Schoolhouse, they do a ton around play-based learning, which is really interesting. I suggest you check them out.
I think it's interesting with learning games. I made a ton of learning games early on in my life, and it's really like it's really difficult to. I think actually more often than not you learn more from games that are not officially learning games than the actual learning games, because they get to be so like focused only around the learning and actually not the fun.
I was just thinking that I know every single capital of the world because of where on earth is Carmen San Diego.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know a lot of stuff about history from Civilization, right? And like, there's all that stuff, but it's definitely super effective with the interactivity and learning. So
yeah, I think I passed East Asian civilizations by playing lots of Dynasty Warriors as well.
I've made software for schools before. The issue that I had was not making compelling software to be taught in schools, but getting into schools in the first place. It seems that systems for at least getting into UK schools are quite tough. So that was I was able to solve the product. I wasn't able to solve the distribution. So if somebody figures that out, I'd love to know.
We have a question.
So with any talks of diversity, you always get people who will automatically kind of just turn off or not listen to you and give like arguments against it and things like that. How do you find that you often like combat those kind of people, especially those in the industry?
I have a very thick skin. And, basically the more no's that you get, I can defeat any argument with numbers. That gives me confidence because data is on my side and everything else is noise. As a person, I have a thick skin, so I'm like, you can talk, but, numbers work for me. So
when you know that you're correct.
Exactly.
It's so much easier.
And I know that eventually everybody has to come on this path because like numbers don't lie.
And I always often think that bigotry is very much in service of mediocrity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For example, like if you are a low-performing man, one method of keeping a status is by artificially lowering your competition by 50%.
Exactly.
Yeah. So by subtle discrimination. So bear that in mind.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists and the moderator. Please, a round of warm applause.